All right, so with that, let's get ready and take a look at our first case with haunted houses.
Built in 1890, the old Victorian house in the village of Nyack, New York, sat vacant and in disrepair when the Ackleys moved in the 1960s. Shortly after moving in, Helen Ackley discovered that the house had other occupants. Sharing the house with the Ackleys were three poltergeists, a married couple, Sir George and Lady Margaret, who lived in the 18th century, and the other, a Navy lieutenant in the American Revolution. During their ownership, Helen Ackley describes several encounters with the poltergeist. On several occasions, they heard phantom footsteps and slamming doors. Multiple times, Helen's grandchildren received small gifts like rings from the ghosts, only to have them vanish later. And in one particular instance, Helen's son-in-law reported a womanly figure in a soft dress staring straight down at him while he lay in bed. Helen reported the spirit's existence and interactions to the Reader's Digest and the local press. Soon everyone knew of the haunted house, everyone except non-locals. Shortly after, she decided it was time to sell the home. Enter Jeffrey Stambovsky, a non-local who was looking for a home to buy in a small town. The seller never disclosed the poltergeist to Jeffrey, and the parties closed on the sale. It wasn't long until Jeffrey heard of the home's reputation, and not being one to take well to ghosts, he filed suit. Jeffrey had no idea that his home purchase was to become one of the most famous real estate cases in legal history. In a case that came to be known as the Ghostbusters case, the court pondered who Jeffrey was going to call when he discovered paranormal activity. At the time, the law in New York required sellers to only disclose property defects, and ghosts, well, aren't exactly defects. The court reasoned that in all fairness, a buyer should be given all the information about a property he's about to purchase. And in the case of hauntings, no normal home inspector could really find the paranormal. The court explained that as a matter of fairness, any property condition that can impair the property value and is within the knowledge of only the seller can constitute the right to rescind the contract. The court held that as a matter of law, the house was haunted, and that fact should have been disclosed to the unknowing buyer because it would have affected the bargaining process. And so it was. The court held for Stambovsky, rescinded the contract, and issued legal precedent that a home could be deemed legally haunted.
All right, welcome back. Fun case, right? So let's talk about it. Let's go through all the issues. We'll talk a little bit about the facts, and then let's talk about the law, what it came to be. So in this case, it took place in 1991. It really was not that long ago. In 1991, this case, we have Mrs. Ackley and we have Mr. Stambovsky. Now, it was interesting that the court noted, and they didn't put a lot of weight behind this, but they made mention that Stambovsky was a non-local. And meanwhile, we have Mrs. Ackley, who has published through Reader's Digest, the local news. She has really perpetuated the rumors that her house was haunted. So what do you guys think? Those two issues, we have a non-local who is unaware of the local reputation of the home, even so much that the home was on a walking tour of the little city of Nyack, versus the homeowner displaying and publishing and really fostering the narrative that her home was haunted. Those two facts, are they significant to you? What if Stambovsky was a local? Would it have changed the court's opinion on whether she needed to then disclose it because it was deemed common knowledge throughout the community? What do you think? How about the fact that she actually published this in the Reader's Digest and in the local press? So it was, she had made this known, right? She had really fueled the fire about her own home's hauntings. Did that strike you as significant in swaying the court's decision? The court, interestingly, found that to be very significant. They said, Miss Ackley, you have started this rumor or perpetuated it, And now you have not disclosed it to this one single non-local buyer. And the court said that was an issue that was unfair. We have to tell that buyer if you're going around telling everybody else. You can't discriminate who you're going to tell that to, especially in the context now of them buying the house, right? Ultimately, the court held that this was an issue, a material fact that needed to be disclosed to the home buyer. And did you catch why? What was the reasoning why? You'll recall that the reason why was that the knowledge of the haunting would have affected the home buyer's decision making along the way, how they negotiated, perhaps the value that they came in with. In fact, the court kind of assumed that the hauntings dropped the value of the house. Therefore, it made it a material fact. But specifically, assumption aside, they said it would have affected how the purchaser would have negotiated the transaction. So therein lies the standard now in New York. Up until that point, there was no issues of stigmatized properties in New York, at least in case law. And so the court was really going away from precedent and looking strictly at fairness. The home buyer, Stambovsky, sued and did not want money damages, just wanted to get out of the contract, just wanted to reset the tables. Give me my earnest money back, you take your keys back, and we're walking away as if this thing never happened. I don't want to live in a haunted house. So the court was looking at fairness rather than precedent, called equitable relief. Rescinding a contract is a matter of equity, not one of damages or ascertaining damages and how much that's going to be. So in looking at equitable relief, the court is really looking at what's fair here. Did the buyer go into this transaction in a way and in a method where it is now fair to rescind the entire contract? And what kind of precedent does that set? So let me ask you, should disclosing haunted houses be a legal issue? It's a good question, and it's one that the court wrestled with. It's one that a lot of commentators on this case have wrestled with. In fact, as Ann mentioned in the case, the Stambovsky and Ackley parties did not have any awareness on their radar that this case was going to become infamous in legal history. Largely not because of the issue, but because the court wrote a pun-filled opinion of certain ghost jokes throughout their opinion to really make this an entertaining read. Because it garnered so much attention and it was so entertaining to read, it really became not a landmark case, but a very famous case. And so a lot of people, a lot of legal scholars, real estate people took to that case and really analyzed this question. Does a haunting constitute a legal issue? Now, on the surface, that may be a favorable answer, but if we really take a deeper look at it, what is the real problem with that question? The problem is not everybody believes in hauntings, right? So just because buyer A believes in hauntings, does that mean that we now have to disclose the haunting to every single buyer, regardless of their background or their beliefs about the issue? And that's really where the legal problem lies. Are hauntings now a material fact?